recruitments. Now we're joined by Mark Field. He's a Member of Parliament for the City of London, also a former recruitment consultant, so he knows a thing or two about salaries. When top businessmen, and they're mainly men, are getting a rise of 55% 2 years ago and 50% this year, we're not all in it together, are we?
Well, at one level, I think we'd all agree we're living in a global market, and we want to get the brightest and best people from across the globe into our top companies. But, I mean, I do accept that this looks not like a free market at all. It looks like a sort of monopolistic club that goes on with remuneration committees made up of the self-same people all being recycled. I mean, only 20 years ago, the furore about Cedric Brown from British Gas, when he was having a package of around about 300,000. I mean, the current going rate there would be about 10 times that amount.
But let's hit this global market argument, because I can understand that the chief executive of BP needs to be paid a lot because Chevron or Exxon may come and get him, and he's very good. But this survey shows that the biggest rises were the lower down directors, not the very top, not the rock star CEOs. And also, for your argument to work, you'd have to show me that top pay in Germany, France, Italy went up by 50%. And I looked, it didn't.
No, it didn't, and I think there's a lot of what you say. I don't entirely disagree, obviously, but I mean, and I don't think we should just go about the whole issue of globalisation. But we do need, obviously, to get the best folk around.
Yeah, but I think my point. You've just agreed with me that I dealt with that.
Well, but I think there is a more genuine concern here, which I think is this whole sense that capitalism now seems to be, or global capitalism in recent years seems to be an unfair bargain. In many ways, what we're seeing with
there's a lot of tents outside St. Paul's.
Absolutely. What's interesting about St. Paul's, obviously it's in my constituency, and I've been down there a few times during the course of this week, is that sense, as you said, it's not just the usual suspects, not just people on the left of politics, but there's increasingly an unease from a lot of middle-class people that somehow the rules of capitalism are skewed against them.
Indeed, we know that. By the way, I've just been told that the Corporation of London, which is the governing area for the part of your constituency, is going to take legal action to get rid of the tents. What do you make of this?
Well, I just think it's very interesting that we've got a Conservative MP on the show who acknowledges that actually there are some serious problems with bonuses in the city and that something needs to be changed, and that actually it's not just immoral, it's also economically rather unsound. Now, the question I want to ask is, why then have we got David Cameron consistently coming out, as he did this morning, saying that, you know, city bankers are continuously being hit and bashed in quite an unfair way and defending those kind of practices?
No, he's not defending the salary practices. He's defending the practices to say we don't want too much more regulation in the financial services industry,
I think that's
without
exactly
which this country would be in a hell of a lot of trouble. It's a global industry where we're big players.
Now?
Well, listen, if we lost a hell of a lot of the banking income, then we would.
I just find this kind of argument really quite naive. I mean, we're just negotiating trillions of pounds worth of banking bailouts again, and you're sitting there saying that we don't need more regulation and that we don't need something to change. And you've just acknowledged just a second ago.
What I'm saying in relation to what's happened here today is what I don't want to see is Vince Cable spending an inordinate amount of time in his comfort zone utilising this idea of how we control industry. What he should be spending his time doing is trying to ensure that we get unemployment's now at a 17-year high, we've got growth that has stalled, and we need to actually get a message across that this country is open for business.
All right, Rohanna, what do you make of this?
Bashing of capitalism.
Vince Cable spent some time this summer looking at this particular question. I mean, the question is, what can the government do, and is it right for the government to intervene in the market and something like this? Cable said he was surprised at the number. He brought in, he had a number of roundtable discussions with various private companies, and he was surprised at their willingness to actually move on this. They weren't as hostile as he expected.
Themselves 50% pay rises. I want to get your reaction in a minute to the action of the Corporation of London. Let me stick with this issue first of all. You know, we've had endless discussions about this, and every time we talk about it, nothing happens, but their pay continues to rise and rise and rise, way ahead of, so that the gap now between the top paid in a company and the average is 10 times bigger than it was in the 1950s. What are you going to do about it?
Well, I think transparency is important. And what we need, therefore, I mean, within public companies, is much more activist shareholder, of course.
Well,
and I think we are.
The government is trying to do
that. But I think
that.
we are at a tipping point. And fun enough, probably Rena would agree with me to this extent. I think what's happening in Wall Street, what's happening at St Paul's, as I say, it's not just the usual suspects. It's increasingly a lot of middle-class Tory voting people who feel they've done the right thing, they've got themselves educated, they've got savings, and they're losing out.
If
Somehow
that's true, you better do something about it.
No, we do. But I'm not sure, as I say, that Vince Cable jumping on this particular bandwagon and spending an inordinate amount of his time trying to solve what he regards as this problem makes a lot of sense, when actually the message should be that this country is open for business.
It's completely related, because at the moment our economy is bumping along the bottom, and yet still we are having companies rewarding themselves 50% extra this year than last. I mean, that just seems phenomenal to me. I mean, it's not economically sound to be rewarding each other for failure. What we're doing at the moment is rewarding
people's shares have not gone up 43% in the past year. The people who own the companies have not had that. Their dividends have not risen by that.
I accept that.
The pension funds have not gone up by that. But we've run out of time. But what is your reaction to this news that's just come through, that the Corporation of London is going to begin legal action to remove the protest?
Well, I think this has been an absolute pantomime, really, of what's happened over the last couple of weeks. And the worrying thing is it's almost like some sort of third world shanty town outside St Paul's, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We've got the Remembrance Sunday, we've got the Lord Mayor's show, all within the next fortnight. And I think on that basis, they're doing the right thing to try and get these people removed. But it's going to be a long-term legal process.
You'll be lucky if the courts move in time for that.
Absolutely right.
Apparently there were Tory voters as well. So.
One or two are.
Right.
But then look at what's happened at Parliament Square, where it's been there for 9 years. One hopes it'll be a rather shorter period for
I wouldn't hold your breath, or it could be an uncomfortable existence. Mark Field, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Andrew.